Колеги, ми продовжуємо робочий день. Тема наступного
You're going to have the next press briefing, the results of the Ukrainian information campaign, decentralization for the local governance bodies. Right here, Rostyslav Tomenchuk, head of the Ukrainian Institute of International Politics, and Kateryna Sidash, project coordinator of the Overcoming Stereotypes about Decentralization based on the European experience and legislative initiatives. You have the floor, esteemed colleagues. Good morning. My name is Rostyslav Tomenchuk, head of the Ukrainian Institute of International Politics. This week ends this series of half a year series of the workshops which we held in different regions together with the Minister of Regional Development, in housing and construction, also with the participation of the Office of Reforms, local officer and the regional administration. The essence of those workshops actually the objective was to ensure communication with the national authorities and the local governance bodies regarding the reform and decentralization. It became obvious that since last year the activity of the Ukrainian mass media and media space was losing as compared to the Russian propaganda in favor of federalism and separation or breaking up of Ukraine. That's why the legislative initiatives within the framework of decentralization have to be discussed and communicated to different regions, and we have to try to overcome those stereotypes which unfortunately crop up very quickly, not only among the ordinary people of Ukraine, but also representatives of the local governance bodies, the village chairman and local deputies. It became obvious that in the process of our workshops, the problem was not so much about the eastern and other region, in the western and the southern regions. In the process of our work, obvious became the need for communication to convey the message of decentralization and the European experience, which much talked about the kind of standard in Poland and the decentralization, which is badly needed in all regions, not only in eastern and southern regions of Ukraine. We were fortunate, if I may put it so, that our fears regarding the discussion regarding federalization were much less, despite the pressure of the Russian information space in Ukraine. Only in the Parisian region we repeatedly heard from the participants and representatives of local governance. They raised the issue of federalization, but they were mostly based on the unconfirmed stereotypes and lack of understanding of reform decentralization in Ukraine, and perhaps they were associated with the fact that they somebody heard some news and tried to link those to the Ukrainian realities. In the process of our workshops and seminars, we communicated with many people, and participating in those were more than 1,000, approximately 1,500 people from different regions of Ukraine, and they obtained the full information regarding the process of decentralization, the Office of Reform, what is unification of different communities in any kind of problems they raise. We tried, or some myths, we tried to ensure to explain those. So I'll give the floor to my colleague.
At our events, we have noticed one joint problem for all the regions: the lack of communication. And those handouts which you have received, the results of our surveys, and they did not understand what is the logic of decentralization, what will be the stages. The majority of people understood that there should be amendments to the Constitution and nothing more. And we have summed up the questions which were asked in the regions. The general number was around 600, but many of them were duplicated. The biggest question was about the logic behind the reform. The majority of people believes that establishing the unions of communities, that is merging of communities, will be the final stage of reform, and that's it. They had no idea about the local self-governments, how they would be elected, how representatives to those governments should be suggested, how the interests of rural and urban areas will be balanced. Actually, people do not understand that now they are entering the new stage in self-government reform, but there is a terrible lack of information. The communication strategy for this reform, as for many other reforms, is very poor, and people are not informed, and they are not aware what's going on. Another block of issues which was raised about federalization, we understood that this was because of the strong Russian propaganda, and this work of Russian propaganda is carried out there all the time and should be kept in mind. Another big issue, the united local communities in rural areas. There is huge lack of information about this issue. What will be done in the future? What new legislation should be passed? This is the question to our legislators. They have to not just draft the concept of the reform, they should implement it carefully in the subsequent legislation, and we should clearly understand how the local self-governance in rural areas would function, what services they will provide for the citizens, and what we have seen, that local and regional elites are not ready to take responsibility upon them. They are not ready to make independent decisions. They are still waiting that somebody from Kyiv will impose some framework, some metrics for them to act. And unfortunately, we have only few local communities who understand clearly what is their tax base, what initiatives they can implement, etc. I would like to mention the following questions asked by people. Many people point out that the merger of communities is voluntary, and many people, unfortunately, misunderstand this decentralization reform and mix it with the territorial administrative reform. People think that just the villages local communities will be united. And we have to explain to people clearly that decentralization means that local self-governments will gain power, and they will be delegated power from the central authorities to deliver many services in terms of social services, construction, etc. Another aspect, some political parties which at early stages mentioned that they support decentralization and in a coalition agreement have signed the provision about decentralization, currently try to use decentralization issues and to make obstacles for the process, and they try to unite protesting electorate. They try to stir up people, and unfortunately this immediately turns the discussion into populist terms, and at this stage there is the stage when local communities have to merge, have to unite, and sometimes small villages do not wish to unite with the bigger ones, with the close cities, and those villages who are very close to the cities and actually exist on the account of the cities, they should merge with them, while those who believe they can exist independently, they should think carefully how they would exist. Also, we have collected the list of stereotypes within the period of 2 months. We will prepare the answers to the stereotypes or comments to them. For example, one of the stereotypes that the reform is related to the liquidation of the oblasts. Another stereotype is as follows, that the decentralization is the strengthening of central power. They think that when small villages have to unite in one stronger unit, people think this is centralization of powers. People believe that all the hospitals and rural hospitals and schools will be closed. That's not true. It's easy to say this publicly, but it's not true, and people are stirred up already. Also, many people believe that many services will be now delivered at the territorial level, at the central of community. Also, people believe that creation of the united territorial communities means the revival of old Soviet collective farms, but this idea is widespread among former heads of the collective farms who use this stereotype from the past. There is a big number of people in the regions who believe that the entire decentralization reform has not either has not started yet or is already finished, and that the final objective of this reform is to unite them with the cities. While we all the time try to explain that we want the first step is to prevent the liquidation or disappearance of very small, incapable villages by the way of uniting them with bigger territorial communities. Local people should understand that the social and economic development plans which had to be passed by yesterday, these plans could be discussed in the future, they could be improved in the future. Thank you, we have finished.
Just small clarification from UCMC. The report you mentioned a few minutes ago, is it accessible? Can we actually access it online? If yes, where exactly are those who wish to do that can acquaint themselves? You can do that on the site of our organization, Ukrainian Institute of International Politics. After this press conference, we are going to put the information there, and also in the social networks which are linked with the site. This information is going to be expanded, and we are going to disseminate this information among the participants. More than 200 people were participants in our different functions, and of course in our groups with who we contact. Thank you. Are there any other questions or clarifications? None at this point of time. So this brings us to the end of this press briefing. So see you again. Thank you. Our next briefing will take place